Welcome back into the Rowdy Studio. I'm Stephen Levine.
You're disgusting.
That's Tom Vandervoort. And we're going to Tejas to have some Tex-Mex.
Well, we're going to Texas to determine who's going to lead heading into the final two races of the season. Jimmy Johnson 2 points ahead of Brad Keselowski.
We know who's going to lead.
We don't know. Although, if you look at the stats, certainly this racetrack does set up well for Jimmy Johnson. Matt Kenseth, the only driver with a better finishing average at Texas than
Let's
Jimmy.
hold off on talking about drivers and let's talk about Texas itself. A very fast racetrack, a track that drivers like. What are your keys to Tejas?
Well, it's very simple. The first key is the transitions, both into and out of the corners. Those are tricky. So you have to have your car working, and the driver has to be able to drive through those transitions and maintain speed. It is very, very fast, but it's really the transitions where the problem comes in. That's number one.
Kajunk, like that.
Yeah, kajunk, very much so. And number two, I think you really, and we haven't had this for a while, you really have to keep fuel mileage in mind. You really, really have to keep fuel mileage in mind here.
I was going to take fuel mileage, but you took it.
You asked for my keys.
Stealing my thunder. I was going to take fuel mileage.
You asked for my keys.
Okay, go ahead.
And I think fuel mileage could be one of them here. The racing groove here is widened out very nicely. And so what that means is guys have a little more room to move around, and that also means that there aren't as many wrecks, generally speaking.
And look, we've talked about how Brad Keselowski has been outperforming his stats at tracks that really he wasn't very good at, like Dover. Now, how did he win at Dover?
Fuel mileage.
Exactly. So if Brad Keselowski is going to take
I think he has an advantage there when it comes to the Penske stuff over Jimmy's stuff.
Jimmy Johnson freely admits that it's not his strength.
Right. So that is definitely something to keep your eye on.
But given that Brad has been better at fuel mileage type games than Jimmy Johnson, I can't help but wonder.
They're not games. This is serious business.
I can't help but wonder if the 48 might tune the engine a little bit with that in mind, or you think they're just going to go hell-bent for leather?
No, I think they've worked on it.
What does that mean anyway, hell-bent for
I'm not really sure. I think they've worked on it, and I think they feel better about it. And they've had a couple successes recently with fuel mileage that I think will make them feel better about it. But I don't think they're going to change their game plan radically to account for that. You just have to hope it works out your way. And, the other interesting thing here is I was looking at the yearly stats. And if you look at Jimmy and Brad together, they have a very similar finishing average. Where they differ is starting average. Jimmy tends to start up towards the top 10. Brad is more of a top 15 starter.
Brad has not been qualifying terribly well in this chase.
So I think it's important in this race for Brad Keselowski to have a good, solid qualifying effort. I think starting towards the mid to the rear of the pack is it's a little more pressure on you come race day. And I think for him, this racetrack, I think it'd be good for him to start towards the front. So I think qualifying is important for Brad Keselowski.
Well, starting towards the front gives you more options. What we've seen is Brad Keselowski and Paul Wolfe having to make strategy decisions because of their starting position. You want to be able to make those strategy decisions because of strategic reasons, not out of necessity.
Sure, it gives you more flexibility. Look, he's going to have a good car, I do believe, at Texas. I think he's going to outperform his career average there, which frankly is not very good.
Okay, now we've mentioned Matt Kenseth, we've mentioned Jimmy Johnson. I also think you have to mention Denny Hamlin.
Oh, absolutely.
Like Matt Kenseth, Denny Hamlin has 2 wins at Texas. In fact, 2 in a row a couple of years ago. And look, he may be out of the championship hunt, but that doesn't mean he wants to end his season with that bad taste in his mouth. So I don't expect anything out of Denny Hamlin short of contending for the win at Texas.
He should be good here. He has been good here. If you look at finishing average, I believe he's 3rd behind Matt and Jimmy. So he's definitely going to be a contender if all goes according to plan. And, Kasey Kahne is right there with Clint Boyer, kind of in that if those other 2 guys have a wreck position. And so Kasey Kahne, I think, is a guy you got to look at here.
You always like to throw Kasey into the mix.
I'm high on Kasey Kahne. I think he's a talent.
You know what I'm high on?
Life?
Yep.
Sunshine.
The other guy or team I would mention is I think I have seen enough from Roush Fenway to say they've turned it around a little bit. They've gotten these cars back under them.
Sure.
A track like Texas.
Which will lead you back to Biffle.
Don't rule out Greg Biffle.
Yeah.
He won here a couple of races ago. He's looked strong of late in this chase on this type of track. I think Greg Biffle is definitely part of the conversation.
Absolutely.
All right, so who's your pick?
Are you going to hate me if I say Jimmy?
I'm going to hate you regardless of who you say.
Oh, so. I'm going to say Jimmy.
All right, you say Jimmy. I'll go with Denny. I'll go with Denny Hamlin.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
There you go. That's Tom. I'm Stephen. Thank you for watching.